Hey everyone, Dave here with another Blu-ray DVD collection update / haul video. This one is the third one I produced for the month of January 2022, and in this one I will be covering the latest two waves of Viavision's imprint label. I believe these are waves 10 and 11. There's quite a few titles to take a look at here, so let's get right into it. Okay, so as I said, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the latest two waves of Viavision's imprint label. This is waves 10 and 11. In the previous video, covered a couple of titles from wave 10. That was the Harry Palmer box set and the big screen British comedy box set, whatever it was called. I've covered those two, so I will be covering the individual titles that were released as part of that wave in this video, and then I'll be covering the entirety of wave 11. Wave 12 has actually just been released a couple of days ago. When I'm filming this, I'm still waiting to receive that, so I'll be covering that in the next video that I'll be covering the imprint titles in. So without further ado, let's take a look at the titles from wave 10. First up, we have got the Browning version 2-film collection. The Browning version is based on Terence Rattigan's powerful play about an unpopular schoolmaster who snatches his last shred of dignity from the collapse of his career and his marriage. This is another one of Imprint's fantastic limited edition hard box sets, which includes two versions of the Browning version. One made in 1951 and another one made in 1994. Inside the box set, both versions of the movie are presented in their own individual Amaray cases. Firstly, we'll take a look at the 1951 version of the movie, which again stars Michael Redgrave. This version is directed by Anthony Asquith. Of course, this imprint edition comes loaded with a bunch of special features. Most are new and exclusive to this set, including a 2021 audio commentary by film historians Joe Botting and Melanie Williams, and a featurette with historian Matthew Sweet on the Browning versions. We'll now take a look at the 1994 version, which stars Albert Finney and Matthew Modine, and is directed by Mike Figgis. This set is loaded with even more bonus features, including an audio commentary by film critic Peter Tonguet, recorded in 2021, an audio interview with Albert Finney biographer Gabrielle Hirschman, recorded in 2021, two brand new interviews with both the composer Mark Isham and Matthew Modine, as well as an archival interview with Mike Figgis. It also features a theatrical trailer. The Browning version isn't particularly my kind of thing, I don't think. This is a very melodramatic British production. I'm not a huge fan of classic British films. There's just something about them that is very dry, very droll. I much prefer my Hollywood classics. And the Browning version, particularly when we talk about the original version from the 1950s, is particularly everything that I just don't find particularly attractive in classic British movies. It's slow, it's drab, it's kind of a really tedious film to sit through. The 1994 version is a little easier to watch. It is still a very slow and kind of droll film. But the story behind this movie, behind both versions of the movie, is actually quite interesting. It's deeply layered, and both actors portray this character with this real sense of verve. They are both absolutely fantastic in this role and really make these movies worth watching. I think the major thing that makes these movies a hard watch for me is that these are based on a theatrical play, and I, for some reason, have never really been attracted to movies that are based on plays, because there's a real theatrical feel about them that I never really feel like translates to the screen very well, particularly if it's a movie that is like a really traditional telling of the theatrical play. You know, plays rely on a lot of scenes which are set in the one location, and actors delivering long, drawling lines of dialogue which are, you know, very exposition heavy and very much like, you know, long soliloquies. I just never quite feel that that translates to the screen very well. I find it just to be quite honest, quite boring for me anyway. But I know there are a lot of people out there who love this kind of thing, and if you are a fan of these movies, you're a fan of these stories, the stage play, I would definitely recommend picking up this box set. But if you're not such a fan of that kind of thing, or you're kind of on the fence about this one, I would maybe think twice about picking it up. The transfer on both of these are absolutely fantastic, particularly the 1951 version. I think this is cleaned up absolutely beautifully. It's crisp, it's clear, it's very filmic. The color management, it's a black and white film, but I guess the gradient management on this is absolutely stellar, and it looks really, really beautiful. A lot of the old British movies haven't really held up very well over the years, I guess because of the film stock that they were printed on. There's a lot of inherent kind of issues related to a lot of old British films for one reason or another, but this one looks really, really great on HD. The 1994 version looks great as well. This is also a very filmic looking movie too. This one is of course in color, and it is a lot brighter and a lot more inviting. I think a lot of people might kind of gravitate towards the 1994 version over the 1951 version, but it's kind of all up to your own personal tastes. Next up is A Reflection of Fear, starring Robert Shaw, Sally Kellerman, Mary Ewer, and Sandra Locke. It's directed by William A. Fracker, and this is the debut of this film on Blu-ray anywhere in the world. A disturbed young girl starts believing that there is something very sinister at work after her estranged father visits her at her mother and grandmother's house with the woman he plans to marry. This release includes a couple of new bonus features, including an audio commentary by author-critic Lee Gambin and an audio interview with actress Sandra Locke and actor Gordon Duvall, moderated by Gambin. It also includes a theatrical trailer. Reflection of Fear is a crime, thriller, horror mystery film from the early 1970s. It's a kind of movie that, again, I'm not particularly drawn to. I'm not a huge fan of these kinds of films from the era. I think because they are also melodramatic and over the top. This movie was one that I didn't really particularly like that much. It's very long, it's tedious, it's quite, again, quite boring to sit through. But it is interesting to check out the performances of Sandra Locke and Robert Shaw. I've never really seen Robert Shaw in a whole lot of stuff, maybe a couple of movies other than Jaws. So it's interesting to see a movie where he's actually kind of headlining here. But it's a slowly boiling mystery thriller made in traditional 1970s style, which again is very melodramatic. It's got this really kind of moaning soundtrack in the background, and it's shot very softly and very soapy. It feels like a television production. The transfer on this has not been described as being new by Imprint. In fact, it's only described on the press release as a 1080p high definition transfer, which tells me this is probably an old master that was maybe used for the DVD or something. I would imagine this is the case because this does feel like a very dated transfer. I think that maybe a lot of that goes back to the original film elements, because again, this is a movie that is shot very softly. It looks like, you know, those kind of movies that looks like they've got Vaseline all over the lenses, where it's very soft and hazy and ethereal and whatever else. It's just a movie that doesn't look very good, I think, inherently. But I think quite a bit more could have been done with this transfer here. The color balance is not great. Like, the black levels are not great. It looks very washed out. It looks like there's been a lot of DNR applied to this as well. And it also looks like there's a lot of digital artifacting on here. In fact, I think this is probably one of the worst releases that Imprint has put out. I had this issue with one or two of the very early imprints where I said, I think Viavision really needs to look at the kind of transfers they have for these movies. It's not enough for Viavision to take like a cult movie like this and slap a prestige label on it. They need to make sure that the transfer is up to top notch. And if it is a subpar transfer, which I believe this one is, maybe just release it under just a regular release instead of a premium label, and flog it off for like $15 or $20 instead of the $30 premium, or the $35, $40 premium that is being asked for these at regular retail price. That said, I feel like this is a movie that does fit in with the Imprint range, so that's why they put it here. But just be wary that I think the transfer on this one is subpar compared to what we do expect from a premium label like this. Again, not a film that I particularly enjoyed that much, but if you are into this kind of thing, I would definitely recommend checking it out, but perhaps wait for a sale on this one. Next up, we have 1969's The Assassination Bureau, which stars Oliver Reed, Diana Rigg, and Telly Savalas. The Assassination Bureau is a spirited caper inspired by a book co-written by Jack London. Reed plays Ivan, the self-confident chief of an association of hitmen for hire who will refuse no well-paid offer, especially the lucrative challenge of an aspiring reporter. Reasoning that a running cat-and-mouse duel with his henchmen will rid the organisation of incompetence, Ivan agrees to become the object of a non-stop hunt. The game is afoot, and Europe is the playground. This, once again, is the debut release of this film on Blu-ray anywhere in the world. It is loaded again with a bundle of new special features, including an audio commentary by historian Kevin Lyons, a featurette with film historian Kevin Newman speaking of the Assassination Bureau, and a visual essay on the film by historian Kat Allinger. It also features a theatrical trailer and a photo gallery. Now, this one is one that is more of my style. This is a late 1960s action, adventure, kind of espionage, spy, globe-trotting adventure spoof. There is a terrific cast in this one, and they all deliver some really, really fantastic, over-the-top performances, but over-the-top in a really kind of campy, corny, comedic way. Diana Rigg is fantastic in this movie. You gotta check this out, particularly for her. She is so much fun. And it's just a really great British action-adventure romp in the style of, you know, Around the World in 80 Days. It's kind of a farce or a spoof on that kind of genre. I really did enjoy this movie, and I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys these kind of late 60s English spoof films. Unfortunately, this is another one that does not feature a very good transfer. The press release simply indicates that it's a 1080p HD transfer from Paramount Pictures, which tells me again that this is an older master that Paramount have had in their collection and they've licensed out. Again, this one looks like it has had a lot of DNR on it. It looks very waxy for most of the time. Color balancing on this is not very good. In fact, there are a couple of scenes where it looks overexposed. People's foreheads look really shiny, and it's just like white is just completely overblown. It is not a very nice transfer at all. I think it is slightly better than Reflection of Fear, but it's not a great premium transfer. Again, I feel like Viavision needs to kind of look at the transfers and decide whether these go into the imprint line or whether they just get a standard release that people are going to pay $15 instead of $35 premium for. But again, this is a great movie, and I think it is a great installment in the Imprint collection, and if this sounds good to you, I would definitely recommend it because it is a whole lot of fun. Up next is 1970s Ned Kelly, starring the Rolling Stones' Mick Jagger. Based on the fascinating true-life story of the 19th century Australian armoured bandit, Ned Kelly is a powerful action-packed adventure that thrillingly captures a bold and lawless era. When their mother is unfairly persecuted by police, Ned Kelly and his brother Dan earned money for their defence by selling homemade liquor. But what begins as a simple moonshine operation quickly escalates into a series of armed robberies, desperate pursuits, and deadly confrontations. Soon, Ned finds himself revered throughout the country as a larger-than-life sagebrush hero, even as the law closes in and prepares for an all-out war. This one only includes a couple of new bonus features, including an audio commentary by film scholar Adrian Martin and a featurette titled Shooting a Rolling Stone. It also includes a theatrical trailer. Now, this is a movie that I've wanted to see for a very long time. It's a film that has a reputation of being one of the worst ever made in Australia. It's one that is revered as having one of the worst performances of all time in a film. That is Mick Jagger as Ned Kelly. But of course, because this is about Australian icon Ned Kelly, I've always wanted to check it out. Unfortunately, its reputation certainly holds true. This is a really terrible film. Mick Jagger's performance in this as Ned Kelly is really awful. He, of course, is doing an Irish accent. Ned Kelly was Irish, and it's just a dreadful accent. But this is a really fun movie because it is so bad. I had quite a bit of fun watching this movie. There are a lot of, great, stupid little sequences, good little action sequences in here, though. The standoff between the Kelly gang and the police at the end is quite good, but this is really quite a disastrous retelling of the Ned Kelly story. If you want to check out a better version of Ned Kelly, there's that one starring Heath Ledger, directed by Gregor Jordan, that was made in, I guess, the early 2000s. That one came out. But look, if you are a fan of Australian cinema and you have heard, I'm sure you've probably heard about this one, it's one that you definitely do want to check out. Again, transfer on this one is not very good. I feel like they have been provided another outdated master. Press release notes this to be a 1080p transfer from MGM, and I believe that this is probably the same master that was used on the Olive Films Blu-ray release of the movie, which was quite controversial when that came out. The colors are really faded in this. Again, there is a lot of artificial DNR and sharpening and stuff going on. There's also a lot of print damage to this. There's wobbles, there's scratches, there's hairs, there's dirt. It looks like it's a film that hasn't been properly cleaned up. That said, I feel like for this kind of movie, this kind of transfer might lend itself to it, because it is a bit of a grungy movie. It is a bit of a kind of an underground cult, independent, cheaply produced movie. And I think sometimes these grungier transfers do lend themselves to these movies. But again, there's that question of whether a transfer like this should be released under a premium label. That said, I am happy to own this movie in a special edition collection, so I'm not too unimpressed that this has been released under the IMPRINT label, and I do think it does perhaps find a decent spot in this collection. I maybe would have liked to have seen this be released by Umbrella. I feel like Umbrella may have been able to do something better with this. Maybe they could have handled a transfer, a new 4K master or something, as they've been doing with their Sunburn screens and their Ozploitation lines. I think it would have fit in very well with the Ozploitation collection, given a brand new remaster. But that said, I'm happy to have it, no matter what way. Ned Kelly, I would recommend picking this one up. It's a lot of fun, but again, perhaps wait for a sale. Alright, so that is it for IMPRINT Wave 10. Overall, I think this was a pretty lackluster, underwhelming range. Not only in the films that were selected for this, but in the transfers that were presented for a lot of these movies. I feel like these were just not up to the regular standard of the IMPRINT label. That said, I'm happy that a lot of these movies are finally available on Blu-ray, and at that, let's have a look at the next wave, which I think holds up much, much better. It's Wave 11. Let's get into it. Next up is Roddy McDowall's 1970 film, Tam Lin, starring Ava Gardner and Ian McShane. A wickedly suspenseful tale of decadent young thrill-seekers and the sinister seductress who holds them spellbound. The film is based on an ancient Scottish folk song where an older woman uses witchcraft to keep her young jet-set friends. This edition is absolutely loaded with brand new special features, including an audio commentary from author and journalist Dr. Adam Scoville, an audio commentary from film historians Vic Pratt and Will Fowler, a visual essay by film historian Kat Allinger, new interviews with the film's cast including Ian McShane, Stephanie Beacham, Delia Lindsay and Kiffer Wisselberg, as well as new interviews with first assistant editor Peter Boyle and Roddy McDowall biographer David Del Valle. It also includes an archival piece where Roddy McDowall remembers Ava Gardner and Tam Lin, as well as a theatrical trailer. This is a very interesting movie. It's a 1970s horror mystery film, and I feel like it's kind of in that same vein as a reflection of Fear that I spoke about earlier, where it's very melodramatic, it's very soapy, it's very ethereal, it's very, soft looking, but I think I preferred this one over Reflection of Fear. It's a very strange, fantastical kind of movie. For me particularly, it was interesting to see a older performance by Ava Gardner. Usually when you see her in films or her most classic films, she's quite a bit younger. It's great to see her deliver a performance sort of in middle age. I think she was a powerhouse performer throughout her entire career. And juxtaposed with that, it's really cool to see an early performance by Ian McShane, who I don't think I've really seen any of his older movies. The only things I'm familiar with him are from Deadwood and a few movies that have followed the Deadwood years. This is a British sort of melodrama, horror kind of thing, and again, it's not really particularly my kind of movie. I found it a little bit tedious for the most part, but as the movie goes on further and further, it really starts to spiral into this really weird movie with an absolutely batshit finale. Like, there's some absolutely crazy stuff bundled into this. I don't want to say too much to spoil it, but it just absolutely spirals out towards the end of the movie, and it's actually quite a fun little watch. The transfer on this is actually really quite nice. It's a film that looks very soft, but the transfer has been handled very good. It looks very filmic. The color balances are really nice, as are the white balances and the blank levels all look great. I believe that this is an older master of the movie. Olive Films released this over in the States a number of years ago, so I feel like it is the same master. Again, the press release for this just indicates a 1080p transfer provided by Paramount Pictures, but this is actually a much better transfer than any of the other ones I've spoken about in this video. So if you're a fan of this movie or movies like this, I would highly recommend it. Again, particularly to check out that early performance of Ian McShane and a sort of middle-aged performance by Ava Gardner. Really good stuff. Next up is John Lee Hancock's 1971 feature, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Finally released from an institution after suffering a nervous breakdown, Jessica seeks the tranquility of a secluded home in Connecticut to help make her recovery complete. But instead of a restful recuperation with her husband Duncan and a close friend in the New England countryside, Jessica soon finds herself falling into a swirling vortex of madness and the supernatural. This set includes a number of new special features, including an audio commentary with director John Hancock and producer Bill Badolato, audio commentary by Kat Allinger, and an audio commentary by Kim Newman and director Prano Bailey Bond. There's also a number of archival features on here, including an interview with composer Orville Stober and an interview with film historian Kim Newman. There's also a making of featurette, a theatrical trailer, and a collection of TV spots, radio spots, and a photo gallery. Again, this is another sort of horror mystery supernatural film from the 1970s in the same vein of Reflection of Fear, in that it's very melodramatic, it's very soapy, it's got that kind of groaning soundtrack, really kind of weird electrical, ethereal kind of stuff going on, and really over-the-top performances. Again, this is not really my kind of movie, but I did kind of enjoy this because there's a lot of fun stuff going on. This is a character that is going completely out of her mind, and as she spirals out of control, the longer the movie goes on, the movie just gets weirder and weirder, and I actually really quite like that. I thought this was quite a fun movie. Again, this is not a brand new transfer. It's simply stated as a 1080p HD transfer from Paramount Pictures. This has been previously released by Shout Factory in 2020. That said, though I do think that this may be a kind of an older master, it's one that has held up very, very well. There are a few instances of DNR and smoothing and stuff like that, but on the whole, there is a fairly decent amount of grain every now and then, and it does look quite filmic. It's a very crisp and clean transfer though, so everything looks absolutely beautiful and pristine, and the color balance on this is fantastic. It's actually surprisingly a very vibrant film. There's lots of really great colors in this one that just radiate off the screen. So overall, even though there are, you know, a few digital things that have happened to clean up this movie, it is overall a really nice transfer, and there's no film damage or anything like that for the most part. So I think this looks really top notch, and it's definitely a movie that deserves its place in the imprint range with this transfer. I don't think this movie could look any better unless maybe some of that grain was added back to it to give it sort of a more cinematic, grungy look. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this release, and if you're a fan of the movie, I definitely recommend checking it out. Next up is Eric Reed's 1990 film, Body Parts, a bone-chilling tale about a medical experiment gone wrong. After a crime psychologist loses his arm and nearly his life in a grisly car accident, he undergoes a daring medical operation to have a donor arm grafted onto his body. But after the operation, the arm starts to take on a violent life of its own, striking out against Bill's wife and children. Bill is driven to learn about the donor's identity, a horrifying discovery that delves him into a world of unimaginable terror. This release includes at least one brand new bonus feature, which is an audio commentary with film historian Lee Gambin. It also includes an audio commentary by director co-writer Eric Red. There's also a healthy selection of interviews with the film's core cast and creatives, as well as deleted footage and a theatrical trailer. Again, not a huge fan of kind of gore horror, body horror kind of movies, and Body Parts is certainly the definition of this, but I'm quite partial to a good 1990s thriller, which this in part is as well. So I quite enjoyed Body Parts. This is a very gruesome film. Like, there's some quite confronting visuals in this movie, so if you do like your body horror kind of stuff, this is a pretty decent movie for that kind of stuff. That said, it's not on the higher echelon of everything. It's not, you know, incredibly bloody and incredibly gory. There's just some pretty confronting visuals in this one. Otherwise, I thought the acting in the film is actually really quite good. It's the kind of movie where everyone could go completely over the top, but it's quite decent, and it's hard to find a place where to put it, whether you do put it in like a gore body horror category or just like kind of a 90s supernatural thriller. I would probably lean more towards that area, which is probably why I did enjoy this movie to the degree that I did enjoy it. Body Parts has not received a new transfer for this edition, but it was released back in 2020 on Blu-ray by Shout Factory in America, and I believe the transfer was created fresh for that release. That said, this is a pretty decent transfer. It's not the greatest, but the film retains its cinematic look. It's got a fairly healthy level of film grain. It's a little bit soft, the colors are a little bit muted, and the black levels, the white levels aren't, you know, fantastic, but this is a fairly good looking transfer, and I probably couldn't imagine this movie looking too much better. So if you're a fan of the movie, definitely recommend it. Next up is 1978's The Medusa Touch, starring Richard Burton, Lino Ventura, and Lee Remick. Novelist John Morla is haunted by the belief that he can, through the power of telekinesis, cause fatal disasters to occur. This obsession is reinforced when, after Morla is assaulted, a moon mission crisis and jet crash occur in short order. The police turn to Morla's mysterious therapist, Zonfeld, to try to get to the bottom of the case. This features a small selection of brand new special features, including an audio commentary with film historian Lee Gambin and author Kat Ellinger, a video essay by Ian McNally, and an interview with art director Peter Mullins. It also includes an archival audio commentary with director Jack Gold and authors Kim Newman and Stephen Jones, a behind-the-scenes featurette, and a theatrical trailer. This is a late 70s British mystery drama horror movie that I really quite liked. It's kind of like a mix between a procedural cop drama, crime thriller British film that you would imagine to come out of the 1970s, but it's got this really cool kind of supernatural thread thrown over the top. If I could compare it to anything, it's quite similar to The Dead Zone, but it's what you would get if this was like a British version of it. There's some great performances in here. Of course, Richard Burton, one of the greatest actors of all time, delivers a really fantastic performance in here. And there's some really, really cool set pieces and sequences in this one that are a lot of fun if you're a fan of these kind of supernaturally infused detective stories. The transfer on this one looks quite good. I believe this is a dated master. It has been released on Blu-ray in America as early as 2013. I think there was a release, but the transfer is really quite good. It's very cinematic, healthy level of grain. The color management's fantastic. Again, not a colorful movie, but it's bright and vibrant, and it's crystal clear. It's very, very clean and crisp transfer, which is really beautiful. I think it looks fantastic. It's a very enjoyable movie, and this is one that I can highly recommend. Next up is 1972's The Possession of Joel Delaney, starring Shirley MacLaine, Miriam Colin, and Michael Hordern. Shirley MacLaine stars as Nora Benson, a New Yorker who puzzles over sudden changes in her brother's behaviour. Joel has begun speaking Spanish and practicing strange rituals. In order to protect her family and save her brother, Nora must delve deep into the mysterious world of Santeria, where she begins to suspect that the spirit of a serial killer may be the reason for Joel's behaviour. This is the debut release of the film on Blu-ray anywhere in the world. It also includes a number of brand new bonus features, including an audio commentary by film historian Lee Gambin, a video essay by costume historian Alyssa Rose, another video essay by film historian Chris O'Neill, and an interview with actor Perry King. It also includes the 1994 documentary Shirley MacLaine Kicking Up Her Heels and a theatrical trailer. Again, this one is an early 1970s horror flick of the kind that I just really can't seem to get into. A little bit melodramatic and over the top, but at least it doesn't have that horrible kind of groaning soundtrack underneath it. So it does feel more like a Hollywood cinematic feature than a low-budget kind of independent film. Of course, Shirley MacLaine is in this movie and delivers a really fantastic, dramatic and powerful performance, which makes the movie worthwhile seeing. Sometimes you might not enjoy the movie, but you can take a lot from the performances, and I think Shirley MacLaine is really wonderful in this. This is, again, the first time this movie's been released on Blu-ray anywhere in the world, and this new transfer has been handled by IMPRINT themselves. On the most part, it is a very nice transfer. Most of the film looks very good. It's got a nice grain management. It's got good color management. It's fairly clear in most instances. There are a few scenes that do appear to be a little bit overblown, where the colors aren't quite managed as well, the black levels are maybe a little bit too white, and the grain makes the image look quite... There's some very heavy grain in some of the sequences, which almost looks like a kind of a digital artifacting, digital grain that it gets really overblown and takes over the image. It's only a couple of instances of that, but I don't think that that has anything to do with the IMPRINT transfer of this. I feel like that is once again an inherent issue with the original film elements, or whatever elements IMPRINT have used to create this master. On the whole, it's a decent looking transfer, and it's great to see IMPRINT handling some every now and then. Once again, this is a decent movie, not one that I really loved, but it's definitely worth checking out. Next up, we have got Sam Raimi's 2000 film, The Gift, starring Cate Blanchett, Giovanni Ribisi, Keanu Reeves, Katie Holmes, Greg Kinnear, and Hilary Swank. It's written by Billy Bob Thornton and Tom Epperson. A fortune teller with extrasensory perception is asked to help find a young woman who has mysteriously disappeared. This is the debut release of this film on Blu-ray anywhere in the world. It includes 2 brand new bonus features, including an audio commentary with film historians Nathaniel Thompson and Troy Harworth, and an interview with the composer Christopher Young. It includes a number of archival features, including behind-the-scenes featurettes, promotional interviews with the cast, a theatrical trailer, and TV spots. Okay, so this is certainly my kind of film. Late 90s, early 2000, horror, mystery, supernatural, thriller kind of thing. These are the kinds of movies that I really love. The cast in this movie is terrific. Cate Blanchett is amazing in this role, and this is just such a fun, quirky, suspenseful movie that keeps you guessing the entire time. It's masterfully directed by Sam Raimi, whose works I'm becoming more acquainted with recently. Of course, I grew up with his Spider-Man movies, but now I'm finally exploring some of his other movies outside those, and I just think he's just such a great stylistic filmmaker with his camera and the way that he presents everything, and this movie is absolutely no exception. It's a little bit different to most of his normal fare, but I think that's what I really liked about this one. Again, I enjoyed this one from beginning to end. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I didn't know what was going to happen, and again, the cast is just wonderful in this thing. The transfer here, I don't believe is a new transfer. It's probably a fairly dated one, maybe from the DVD era. Again, press release just says 1080p HD transfer. I believe it's probably handled by the studio, which is Lionsgate, but it looks very good. Again, it's a very filmic looking movie from the era. It's not colourful. There's no overblown colourful moments. It's very much shadows and a little bit of light, and the management of all that is great. The management of grain is great. I think this is a really beautiful looking transfer, and I would highly recommend picking this one up. And finally is David Coop's 1999 film Stir of Echoes, starring Kevin Bacon. Tom Wistke is a normal, hard-working family man whose life is turned upside down when he is hypnotized at a neighborhood party. He starts seeing things he cannot explain, and the visions get more graphic and horrific. He then begins to realize that the visions are of an unsolved crime. This is the film's debut release on Blu-ray anywhere in the world. It includes a number of exclusive new bonus features, including an interview with director David Coop, an interview with actress Catherine Erb, and an interview with production designer Nelson Coates. It also includes a plethora of archival features, including an audio commentary with director Coop, a number of behind-the-scenes featurettes, classic interviews, scene comparisons, screen tests, deleted scenes, trailers, TV spots and original promos, an original music video, and a photo gallery. Again, this movie is totally my kind of thing, a late 90s supernatural thriller film. Kevin Bacon is such an awesome actor. I just love his movies. I think he's so hammy and over the top, but he brings so much fun to all of the movies that he's in, and this one is absolutely no exception. This is kind of a real hidden gem of the kind of late 90s horror, thriller, supernatural kind of genre. I feel like it's very much like Sixth Sense in the way that it is presented and the themes that it tackles. In fact, it was released in the same year as Sixth Sense, so I feel like it may have been overshadowed by that movie, maybe at the time of release and over the years. But this is definitely a movie that does hold up the test of time, and I think it's really good, and I think it's one that should be reassessed by film viewers because it's a lot of fun. Again, it's not the greatest mystery thriller film you're ever going to see. I certainly think The Sixth Sense is the better movie, but this is one, again, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I thought that it was thrilling, it was suspenseful, and I was second-guessing myself the entire movie, and it is so much fun. Again, there's no mention of this being a new transfer at all, but it looks great. It's very similar to the transfer used on The Gift, but again, I feel like some of these more recent movies, even though these are like, 25, nearly 30-year-old movies at this point, they're more contemporary than, say, movies made in the 70s and the 80s, and they are holding up better because I think the masters have been looked after better over the years. This is probably the same master that was used on maybe an earlier DVD, but it looks fine. Good grain management, good color management, and really good black levels and stuff like that. It's a very atmospheric thriller, so again, no huge colors or anything like that, but it's all in the shadow and the grain and all that. I think it's really great. If you like these kind of movies, definitely check this out because I feel like not enough people know about or have seen this movie, and I was certainly in that camp before I saw it and walked out really loving this one. Overall, Imprint Wave 11 is very good. I enjoyed pretty much all of the movies in this wave. There were a couple that I was maybe a little bit, more kind of on the fence about, but a couple that I really did love in this, and I would recommend probably picking up this entire wave. At that, Wave 12 from Imprint Films has just been released. Once again, I have not got my hands on them just yet. I believe they're in the post as we speak, so I should get my hands on them very soon and then probably put a video together in about a month's time. Until then, take care. I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy. Hey everyone, if you haven't yet, smash that big old subscribe button up on your screen to keep up to date with all my content, and hit that like button down below. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month for exclusive videos, early access content, and to get your name up on the screen. Thanks again for watching.